Liverpool 2, Manchester United 2 in what I consider to be one of the matches of the season. Obviously, from an entertainment standpoint, there were goals. It was a chess match, specifically in that first half. But for me, it was the amount of times that there was a momentum swing in the match, from United scoring the first goal to Liverpool turning it around and then United getting the goal to tie it in the end. But going back to the first goal, by the way, I did say in my pre-match preview that I didn't think Martinez should have played because of his terrible performance against Newcastle. So I think he's going to go Onana in goal, Martinez, although he was one of the worst players against Newcastle. I think he'll keep him. And of course, he gets the first goal of the match with a laser to the roof of the net. So good thing I'm not Ruben Amorim, because I clearly would have lost the match if I was. But let's start with the tactics, because I think that was the story of the first half specifically. United in that 3-4-2-1, although realistically it was more of a 5-2-3 playing in that mid block. Liverpool in their more traditional 4-3-3, but the way that Arne plays with the back line is always interesting. Typically, teams in a back four push the fullbacks high and wide and let the center backs build out to stretch the opponent. Arne likes to have the fullbacks closer to the center backs so that the passes are shorter, and it also allows the fullbacks to step into the midfield and give Liverpool a numerical advantage. This then leaves Salah and Gakpo much wider, which obviously, if you're a Liverpool fan, you know how dangerous Mo Salah can be when he starts wide and then he cuts in. But that's only possible if the fullbacks occupy more space in the midfield so that it drags out a couple of players out and away from the wide areas. The player selection, I think, was key for Ruben Amorim, and I said it in my pre-match preview video, which, by the way, if you guys enjoyed that one, let me know, and I'll try and do a video like that before one or two big matches at the weekend. Basically, just lineups, predicted tactics, and what I think the scoreline is going to be. But as I was saying, Amorim went for a younger, more mobile midfield with Ugarte and Menu, and also Bruno Fernandes back in after his red card suspension, and Ahmad as the fourth, all underneath Rasmus Højlund, which, to be completely honest, I'm still not convinced. I think he's a poor man's Haaland, and when your team is defending a lot, he barely touches the ball, and his hold-up play isn't great either. But besides that, what I do think we saw today was the first real solid defensive performance from Manchester United. It feels like since Amorim's arrived, he hasn't had enough time to focus on defending, and United just leave way too many holes in the midfield and are way too suspect in the back. But I think the reason it was so good was partly because they went away to Anfield on a 4-game losing streak against the #1 team in the league, so there was absolutely no way they could have had another bad performance. They also came in with the right mentality, also knowing that they had players who could actually cover ground in the midfield. And I think that's the part that worries me about Ruben Amorim's system, is that when he used to play with this at Sporting, he was always going to be the better team on the ball with more possession and more dangerous and creative attacking players. Now that he's come to Manchester United, to a team that's visibly very broken and in possession is not the best team, his struggle was always going to be how he transforms that system into a better defensive system without forcing those wingbacks to stay in that back line of 5 the entire match. And I think that's where he got the next part right, the counter-attack. Liverpool is a team that has very few weaknesses and are very good in all aspects of the game across the entire pitch, player for player. I think their biggest weakness, in my opinion, was always going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold and his lack of defending. Every time that Manchester United had a possibility for a counterattack, they went down the left side of the pitch and they played some balls in behind when Trent was caught out of position or not paying attention. So I think with the mobile midfield, a solid defensive system, and the right decisions in the counterattack, Ruben Amorim got the tactics right, which leads me to the next question. Were Liverpool bad? And I don't think that Liverpool were bad or that they had an awful performance. In one of the earlier interviews prior to the match, Arne actually mentioned how he thought that Manchester United was much better than their position on the table shows.
I said it before the first fixture, and I can say it one more time, that they have much better players, in my opinion, than maybe the league table shows at the moment.
And I think he's right. When you look at the differences in that lineup that Manchester United had against Newcastle versus the one that they had today against Liverpool, I think he had a feeling that it was going to be a different game. And there was no way that Ruben would come into this match away at Anfield and play Christian Eriksen and Casemiro in the midfield against McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch. And I think for Liverpool, not having Dominic Szoboszlai was a huge reason that they did not dominate as much as I thought they would. Curtis Jones, he's been playing pretty well lately, but today he went missing, and I think having Szoboszlai would have given them a much more attacking threat. And part of that attacking threat, and one of the reasons reasons that Liverpool is so good going forward is the amount of forward runs that they make. This is one of those things that you have to actually really pay attention to see, but I noticed it earlier in the match when McAllister had that one opportunity to score. They do this so well in most of their games. Anytime that they feel it is too stagnant, instead of just moving the ball side to side to unbalance the other team, one of the players in the midfield makes a forward run for either a ball to be played in behind or at least to open up space in the midfield for somebody else. And besides a couple of these in the first half, I didn't really see Liverpool do this very much in the match. However, one of the easiest ways that they do get up the field, I think, is just with their positioning of those fullbacks and those wingers. And as I said earlier, the players at the back are slightly closer together and the wingers are much more spread apart, which allows Liverpool to always have an advantage in the middle and then quickly play the ball out wide to Salah in the attacking third. And then I think from there, it seems like Arne gives them a lot more freedom, which is why they score so many goals. But I do think that once again, back to Manchester United's tactics, playing with that back line of 5 just makes it very difficult, even when Salah does get the ball up top. It's just so hard to break down, especially when you got players in the midfield who also have a pretty good engine that don't stop running. So fair play to Manchester United. They minimized the impact of Liverpool's attacking threats, and ultimately, I do think this was a fair result. So what does this say about Ruben Amorim? For me, I thought the tactics were correct, and the majority of the team, when they're healthy, are going to be able to play in this system. But their performances cannot be inconsistent, and that's been their biggest struggle so far. I also think this was a slightly misleading performance, only because it was more of a solid defensive showing, rather than what they can do when they have more of the ball and the possession that they have is established, rather than just counterattacking against better teams. It's much easier to look like a better team when you defend and counterattack than it is when you're the team that has a lot of the ball and the opposition just sits in and forces you to find a way to break them down. So I'm curious how this performance specifically is going to translate from a tactical sense rather than just a mentality when they play against teams that Manchester United should be able to beat. The final question, does this change Liverpool's chances of winning the league? And I still think Liverpool are so far ahead that the only way they lose the Premier League this season is if they absolutely bottle it in the second half. I do think that Manchester United performance would have beat a majority of the teams in the Premier League, and Liverpool still came away with a draw. They still also have the possibility of being 9 points ahead of Arsenal when they play away at Nottingham Forest this week, so it really is Liverpool's league to lose. I see very little weakness in Liverpool's game, and the only one that Manchester United exposed today is typically not really an issue. Trent's lack of defending is typically hidden well with his possession and the attacking capabilities that he has. So all in all, not much has changed. I still think Ruben is the man for Manchester United, and Arne Slot's Liverpool cannot be stopped from winning the Premier League. Let me know what you guys think.